This is one of our first tech founder sessions, so really excited to do this. We've got Gianluca, who is the founder of Visyond. So great to have you with us, Gianluca.
Thank you for having me.
The idea really is to get to know Gianluca a bit in this session and hear his story. I'm always kind of personally fascinated by, people's journeys to having an idea and getting to the point where they've created something and gone through that process, which I suspect in many areas is not straightforward. And then we'll have a bit of a demo of Visyond and get an understanding of what the tool does. So yeah, I'll kind of hand over to you initially, Gianluca. Do you mind kind of introducing yourself and just telling us how you've got to this point where you've got this wonderful tool on the market?
Right. Hello, everybody. So my name is Gianluca Bisceglie. I'm the founder and CEO of Visyond, which is a web platform that transforms the spreadsheet into a decision-making tool. So you start from an Excel-like environment, and then you get to all the point of collecting assumption and presenting dashboards for decision makers. And the way I got to this point is because I've been working with Excel from the very beginning of my career, I would say since university time. And always, whenever there was the time to make a decision, always my managers came up and said, okay, can you set a model to tell us whether we should invest in this project, yes or not? We should acquire this company, yes or not? What would be the price per share? And having to deal with Excel in a sort of model guru setting, when I had to collect assumptions from people, and make sure that I could stand behind those numbers when decision makers, investment committees ask me, where is this assumption coming from? What are the most important input drivers? And what if I change this, and that? So at those times, I felt really shaking in those meeting rooms in front of those serious people and senior people. So I said, okay, there must be another way. Is it possible that this is not being created yet? So I looked for add-ins. I looked for additional platforms. There was the situation where I had to take data from Excel, move it to different platforms. And in this back and forth, there was so much error probability. So model had to be edited again and audited again every time. So it was very complicated. So I started Visyond as my hobby project. Before having an MBA, I am an electronics engineer with specialization in software engineering. And so I started Visyond as my hobby project when I was an investment fund, working weekends and nights until, some friends asked me, what are you doing? Do you have any pet projects? So I showed this to them. And one of them happened to be a director at McKinsey. And they said, wow, we would definitely use something like that. It would help us. So why don't you do it full time? I was relatively old at the time, 36 years old. To jump from a VP in private equity to entrepreneurship career was a difficult choice, but they said, well, no worries, we'll find the money for you, just go do it. So that's how it happened. It's one of those cases where I was not pushing for this to become a company, but it was more of a pull from the environment that made me feel that there was something there that I should have explored.
Amazing. Thank you. That's really, really interesting to hear how that kind of came about. I suppose the next step, Gianluca, is to talk about the tool.
So as I was mentioning in the story of Visyond, I tried to address the main problems that I was having while using Excel, which is, in my opinion, a very flexible platform, very powerful. It accesses all the power of the desktop, but it was not built 20 years ago with collaboration in mind or with the end-to-end decision-making process in mind, but was a calculation tool. And it's very, very, very good at that. That's why I was looking for add-ins before jumping myself in solving the problem. And by the way, we have recently launched an add-in as well, because we recognize how important it is for some people to use legacy features like macros, although we don't recommend macros, but okay, people want to use them, or they want to use other add-ins for financial modeling. I'm not here trying to say that Excel needs to be replaced, not at all. We need a toolbox, which is, especially in 2021, has to be full of different tools used for the right occasion and to do the right thing with the right tool. The main areas we were addressing were the manual tasks that people are required to do with Excel. So most probably you have analysts or people who need to do a lot of what-if analysis, sensitivity analysis, Monte-Carlo simulation, scenario planning, budget versus actuals. All these use cases require a lot of changing cell, unnecessarily duplicating data, like one worksheet with the hard-coded actual data data, the other with the forecast, etc. And besides adding to the complexity of the decision-making process, it also adds high probability of error, because the more cells you have, the more connections you have, the more error-prone the model is. One area of Visyond is the automation of the sensitivity analysis. For example, you have your decision KPI, could it be profit, internal rate of return, whatever you use to make your decision. You right-click, and I will demonstrate that, and you will have a full scan of the model that will tell you exactly what are the input drivers in order of importance that determine a variability into that output. Based on that, all automatically, Visyond builds two-way sensitivity analysis. It will build pessimistic and optimistic scenarios. It will build Monte-Carlo simulation with heuristics, of course, because there is no awareness of the data that you have. But then you can go back to, for example, simulation and say, well, this is not a normal distribution. This is a triangular distribution, and this is the mean and the standard deviation, and rerun the analysis. But during the time of a coffee break, you have got an analysis on the sensitivities of your model that would take like 2-3 days of analyst time to carry out. That's the key benefit there. The other thing is the high complexity. Most of other tools that I was exploring while I was looking for solution required to learn new things. Like the environment was very prescriptive. It was an ERP-like, database-like thing where you had to insert data in very specific position, in very specific places, learning new menus, etc. One thing we don't ask people is to have lengthy installation. So you can just sign up and you are ready to go like you would be in Excel 365. And it's very simple to use because it's like Excel. If you can write an offset formula in Excel, you can do it in Visyond, or you can just import your Excel. The final part is the security threat. So what happened when I was developing models is that different stakeholders requested different angles of the model. Like, for example, the CEO wanted to see only the return on investment. The CFO wanted to see other KPIs. Everybody wanted to see different things. So what you had to do is creating unnecessarily either multiple copies of the file to share with them to gather their assumption. And also you had to expose a certain complexity to them. So the full spreadsheet, you had to explain to them what numbers they could change in which worksheet in order to stress test the model. So with Visyond, what we do is that we have a single source of truth. So like a Google Sheet or Excel 365, it's a web-based single spreadsheet that you can play with. And you can decide exactly what worksheet or what dashboard is seen or can be played with by other people. So there is a very high level of permission granularity here. As you can see, it's a bit like Google. So you go to visyond.com, you log in, you land on project list, and here you can import a file from Excel or create a new one. You see the list of your collaborators, the ones that have been created through the add-in, the others that have been created through importing a file, and so on. And once you open the file, as you can see, this is like an Excel. So you can simply do equal 2 plus 2, or you can do offset. I mean, the function that you have in Excel, we support them here. It looks and feels like a spreadsheet, really. The additional layers that you benefit from when you import your project is the fact that you can use natural names. So if you assign a column as a natural name provider, and you can change, you can say, okay, I want column row 2 to be the natural name provider. The formula will be read in human language by doing the intersection of the two. If you don't like that, you can switch the names off and it will go back to Excel legacy. And the other thing is the audit mode, which will at a glance show you the dependencies and the precedence of the cells. Cross worksheet, it will show you the nature of the cell. So for example, if this is a string, it's purple. If it's a date, it will be green. I mean, so you have a bird's eye view of how the project look like. The fundamental technological enabler that helps with analysis, sensitivity scenarios, and reporting is the fact that Visyond always operate in scenario mode. So whatever you see here is a scenario, and it's called with CEO. And I have many of them have been created. So for example, Alan created this one, and you can see when I click on it, it shows you the cells that have been reset. And here you see that each cell carry multiple assumptions at the same time. And depending on the scenario selected, the assumption shifts. So it's not like the history or the versioning, even in Google, where you have to remember what was the version when I saw that assumption and what's so nice. everything that is done by any collaborator that connects to this spreadsheet, it is always creating an additional layer for the user that nobody else can destroy. And so there is full accountability here. Nobody can override other people's data, and you can always compare scenarios on the fly. So for example, if we are debating, now we are on the budget scenario with a client or senior management, and senior management says, okay, I see the sales volume in Germany are this, but I don't believe that. Okay, that's fine. You can record a new scenario and call it like in meeting room, for example, or whatever you want. And now you are in scenario recording mode, and you can change things. You can say, well, I believe the sales volume would be 6,000 the first year. It's okay, the second and the third. I say 7,000 here. And then you can change the head count and you save. And at this very moment, you see that you are in scenario meeting room. This person left the project, so we could not notify them yet, because we notify collaborators when new scenarios, new assumptions are created. So the entire team is aware of what others are doing. And if you create a chart, and creating a chart is very easy. I mean, you can go here, charts, and you have all the charts you want. You can look at the charts, for example, that you have created. They are always available. And you can switch scenarios and see how the chart changed, for example. But the most interesting thing here is the scenario comparison. So we have just created a scenario. There were some scenarios before. The question is, how do my decision KPI look under the different scenarios? That's where the analysis come in. And as you can see, Visyond is built across the three phases of the decision making based on financial modeling, which is the build part, which we are looking at right now, the analysis part, and the reporting part. You switch to analyze, you go to scenario, and you say, okay, there are a few scenarios created before. I'm not interested in that. What scenarios do I want to compare? Okay, the base, maybe the one with the CEO, but more importantly, the one we just created, the one in the meeting room. We just created that on the fly. And what KPIs do I want to see? You click on the magnifying glass, and you are taken back to the spreadsheet. Now you tell me, okay, what do you want to see? Do you want to see, for example, the net profit? Okay, let's look at the net profit between year 0 and year 5. You pick it up. It comes back here. You can customize the palette if you want, and you run. So yeah, it will override the current one. Here it is. So now you have, in presentation mode, if you are in a meeting room, Visyond is always presentation ready. So the bridge between calculations and visualizations is, as you have seen, is immediate, it's seamless. So you can see the net profit under the base case, under the CEO case, and the one that we just created in the meeting room. And here you also have the table that shows the variances compared to the base case, and you can export the table, you can download it in PDF, you can send it to our slide. And what you can do here is, for example, send this analysis to PowerPoint. Just with a click, you export to PowerPoint. The other, yes, downloading here. Yeah. So, and you have a quick and dirty to show to your colleagues. The most important thing is when you send it to Visyond slide, which is this one, so our dashboard. So here you have our native dashboards that can be shared very granularly. For example, see here you have the collaborators, and you can say that I want this person not to see the worksheet, but to see not even all the dashboard, but see only this last one that we have created. And when that person will open the project, what they will see will be only this one when they open it on their mobile or on their tablet. And another interesting thing is that besides the scenarios on the same slide, you can add input and output drivers. For example, you can say, okay, I want to see a chart that I created in the spreadsheet. So you pick it up, you are taken back to the spreadsheet as usual, you are presented with the slide, you click on it, and it puts it on the slide. So you are preparing your dashboard for essentially for clients or decision makers. And then you can say, okay, I want to do this slide to be driven by certain assumption. So you can click here, taken back to the spreadsheet and say, okay, what are the drivers that you want to change? So I want to change, for example, a couple of input here, the head count, and I also want to see an output. For example, I want to see the net profit this year. So done. And here they are. But what is the key here? The key here is that you can offer your stakeholder the opportunity to not to interact with your spreadsheet, but to interact with these slides and stress test the model. And as they are doing this, they are not impacting, not changing the spreadsheet itself. So if I now go to the spreadsheet sales volume year 0, I will not see 10,000, but I will see exactly what was there before, whatever the analyst set as the, which is 4,000. So this is a playground for you to have fun. You can duplicate and say, okay, the same slide, you can duplicate it 3 times. You share each time with a different stakeholder, and each of those stakeholders will have, their playground to play. And if you get good at styling a little bit, I mean, you can achieve results like this. You have styled, let's say, the cell with a drop down or with a slider, and you can see the output value and chart representation. We have basically covered the bridge between the scenario planning, comparison, and reporting with interactive dashboard, and the securing of sensitive data. So the fact that each worksheet here, for example, you can see the people, if you see access, so there is access for every worksheet, and there is access for every slide. So when you go to a slide and you go here, you also can remove people from viewing this slide.
Well, I've got one question for you, Gianluca. So I'm just thinking about that in terms of financial modeling in particular. Do you see most users kind of still building the full model in Excel and then importing it in and basically using this as a very clever scenario and security tool, or do quite a lot of users actually build lots of formulas in here as well?
It depends. There are people who don't like Excel, so they like the fact that, for example, we are interactive in like when they type a formula, they see they see colors, they see the type of the cell. So they say it's like Visyond is talking to me. But if you say this to an experienced Excel modeler, they might be annoyed by that because they are used to the flat white thing, and for them it's normal. So it really depends on taste. And I don't really mind. As I said, they can access Visyond through the Excel add-in. They can access Visyond through importing Excel into Visyond, and they can directly build a model from scratch inside Visyond. The type of clients we have right now are more the people who start with Excel because, of course, they have a legacy pool of Excel models that they have, and nobody would dare asking them, okay, rewrite it in Visyond. It'd be crazy. So they start importing it, but then they get used to the interface. So they might compromise some shortcuts, etc., to have this kind of audit mode and additional features that they wouldn't have with Excel. But the key differentiator here is not the build-up part, but more the automatic analysis and the reporting. I think we can move to answering the question that every decision maker actually wants to know when they get to a meeting room with an analyst. It is, okay, you are giving me a figure. We are going to make 100 million profits. Okay, good. But how sure are you about the assumptions? And what if these assumptions change? So obviously, the analyst might have prepared a lot of potential scenarios and assumption changes, but especially if the model is complex, he would not have the certainty that he has taken everything into account. Or there could be some hidden cells, especially if you are inheriting models from somebody else. And that's something that Visyond found in different models. People called us saying, oh, there is an error in the tornado analysis because this cell is not everywhere. I don't understand this cell. I say, well, whoever was the model before, they made this cell as some sort of plug to control the model because it was hidden, it was transparent, but it is one of the most important drivers in this model. So it also acts as a diagnostic tool, which is, for example, if you want to go here to net profit, you would right click, you would click on auto analysis, and what it would do, It's, again, you go for coffee break, it's running Tornado, so understanding what are the most important input drivers, building sensitivity based on that, building scenarios, scenario waterfall. We'll go through them one by one. As I said, the Tornado analysis shows what are the most important input drivers for the profit in year 3, which is the cell that we selected. So we know that when the average price in year 4 in France, so on a different worksheet than we consider, changes by plus minus 10%, and you can change this percentage here and rerun, the impact on the profit is more or less 10%. So, okay, be careful about making wrong assumptions here. Whereas if you see the headcount in year 4 in France, when this changes by plus minus 10%, the answer could be, who cares? This can cut conversation short in meeting rooms when people get, very precise on certain assumptions, saying, oh, why this is wrong, in my opinion. You say, yes, okay, even if it's wrong, we don't really care. Based on that, Visyond takes the top 2 assumptions and builds a 2-way sensitivity analysis where you have a first assumption, the most important assumption changing around its current value. So, for example, in this case, it's taking a minimum of 1,600 and a maximum of 4,400 and 5 intervals. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 interval. And within each interval of the average price, which is on this x-axis, you have the second input coming in, which is the sales volume in year 4, taking the value of 6,000, 20,000, etc. You want to see a better granularity? Fine. You change the number of interval, you rerun, and you have more interval. Do you want to see the sales volume taking precise value here? You can put them comma separated by saying, okay, 6,000, I want to take this 8,000, and I want 9,000. And you see, and now you see the second input being 6,000, 8,000, 9,000. Then you, being a decision maker, you can say, okay, what do I believe the average price would be? Maybe around 7,000. Okay, so we are here. And what do I believe the sales volume to be? Okay, around here. So this is the number. And you can see what would cost you to make a mistake in estimation, because you can see the sensitivity, obviously, of this model. And as usual, you can print, you can send to PowerPoint, you can send to dashboard, as we've seen before. You can change the palette and customize the chart. You can export the sensitivity table, which is just a table version of this. And the key here is that if you are familiar with data table in Excel, remember how much it costs you in terms of time and effort. Every time to change something, you have to reformat the chart and reformat the table, etc. This is done live in the meeting room as you speak. Then the heuristics on the scenarios. These are all the scenarios that have been made before. And then there is the new ones like the pessimistic and the optimistic. So basically, Visyond is aligning the top 5 drivers in a way that they all contribute positively and negatively to the net profit, and showing you what is the difference between when the top 5 drivers, all of them are, let's say, in a positive world and all of them are in a negative world. And then you get into the scenario waterfall, which dives deeper and tells you what are the cells, the assumptions that make up the difference between the net profit, let's say in the pessimistic scenario, and the net profit in the optimistic scenario. Then you go in and you say, okay, the tax rate changes by 6 million. The cost per unit in France changed by 1.5 million. So you have a sense of what are the differences between the two scenarios, also in a very analytical way, if you know, because you can know all the assumptions that have changed between the two scenarios, from what value, how much that assumption changes. In this case, it decreases by 18%. And this makes, of course, if the taxes decrease by 18%, you can see that the changes on the net profit is plus 4%. Same for cost per unit. You see the starting value, the optimistic value, and how much the output changes. So again, creating this analysis would take a long, long time. And this is done with a click. And finally, because the world is not deterministic, I presume you are familiar with Monte-Carlo simulation, which is answering the question, what is the probability that my financial results are going to be, for example, greater than, or let's say at least positive, at least 0. So the probability is 62% in this case. So what we have done in the previous analysis, sensitivity, scenario, waterfall, they are deterministic, meaning that there are hard assumptions there from experts, from yourself, but the world is not deterministic. So for example, the price could take oscillations. The inflation is usually a triangular distribution with a mean and a max and a mode. And so that's the way you model these input drivers. And once you model these input drivers this way, like for example, the cost per unit is a normal distribution. It is not normal because it can be negative. But again, these are the heuristics you can go in and change, say, okay, I want this to be triangular distribution, and you rerun the analysis. After you have modeled the key input drivers with probability distribution, then Visyond will give you this answer. We'll say, okay, assuming running the world 500 times, 1,000 times, 10,000 times, so tossing the dice with all these variables changing 10,000 times, the expected value of your profits is going to be this, and that. And if you don't know, for example, how to model the average salary or how to model the, for example, the average price, you can use this function to dump data into Visyond, so your historical data, and Visyond will show you the theoretical probability distribution against the bars, which is the actual data. So you can decide visually what is the probability distribution matching your data, or you can also look at the textbook goodness of fit test. And here it will tell you, for example, that the exponential distribution wins one test, the log normal wins two tests, the student distribution wins two tests. So you are undecided basically between two distribution, and you can test them both and see what happens.
Again, just another observation, having used things like at risk years and years ago, it's just fascinating to me that obviously you've got the scenario value add, you've got the security stuff, but to throw in Monte-Carlo and all of the kind of key driver impacts on top is very, very powerful.
And the thing is that you don't have to learn new things as usual, because when you go to, if you install At Risk or Oracle Crystal Ball, you need to kind of learn their tutorial. But Visyond is always the same. You see, it says, okay, tell me what is the output. You pick it up from the cell in the grid. Done. Okay. Then tell me what are the inputs, and you pick it up. So it basically guiding you. And when I said that it solves the complexity issue, one thing is that there is a standard setting in every module, which is, okay, select a scenario, select an output, run. Or in sensitivity, for example, select an output, select the first input, select the second input, run. So you get it, like in half an hour, really you get it. And even if you don't, there is a training mode which step by step guides you on the page. So it's really kind of foolproof tutorial-based application. And for the Monte-Carlo simulation, one of the things is that, for example, Excel for Mac, to the best of my knowledge, has some issues with Crystal Ball and At Risk. And so a few of the clients we have, they got Visyond because they needed an online, a web-based version of the Monte-Carlo simulation, which the add-in for Excel do not offer right now.
Very, very powerful. Yeah, I love it. And I say that if it's not clear on Full Stack, that there's no affiliate thing between us and any tech company, but just as a pure modeling kind of geek, I think it's amazing. Thank you for showing us this, Gianluca. And you talk so passionately about the tool. And I hope we'll see you again soon. I'm sure we will. We'll stay in touch and we'll try and get you back in the future as well.
Absolutely. With great pleasure. And thank you, everybody, for showing up.